Okay, all right, Finance Committee, October sixth, 9 AM. Santa, call the roll, please.
Alt.
Here.
Bowers.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
McTaggart.
Call the meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So.
We have a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have any public comments? Hearing none, we'll go to Myron Munyon, who doesn't appear to be here. So we'll skip over him. There's nothing of note from on liability stuff, Bill, or?
No, just working on the cyber security renewal. We submitted the survey and, I did get Myron's response back and we're still working on some other things for that, so.
The other thing was that we talked about the old courthouse and what we needed to do, and I saw your email that
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to insure the full that, there's no law because it's a historical site to require us to rebuild it or this is from Myron Munyon, an email. I called the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, spoke with Mr. Hauser, asked him if there were any insurance requirements for historical registry, and he said no. Even if you receive grants, that you would not be required to insure to replacement value. I hope this helps. So the moral of the story is, we still need to figure out how much we do want to insure it for, but
Right.
we don't need to insure it for 25 million or whatever the crazy number is. Maybe it wasn't that much. That was $25,000. I can't remember.
I don't remember
There was
off the
some
top of my
crazy number. It was gonna cost us a year to insure it for the
0.5 maybe?
replacement value. And we don't have to do that, so we need to. Is that gonna impact our
It shouldn't, no.
budget stuff?
No, I accounted for, percentage over.
Okay. Alright, so that's it for Myron. Susie, group insurance has good looking numbers.
I do, guys, I'm excited. So everyone should have a packet in front of them right here. The first page is the original renewal where we started out with Blue Cross Blue Shield. That was at 9.4%. I was able to work that down, page 2, to 2.69%, which is great. However, if we move vision and the life and fall life over to them, they'll give us another 1.5% off, so we would get it to 1.16%. Or 1.19. So if we look at that, that would go down even more, which is great. If we, page 3 has the dental, which is just a slight increase for the Delta Dental. I know you guys are really happy with that, so I figured keep it with the Delta Dental. And then my page, the rest of them are the quotes from Blue Cross Blue Shield compared to your current vision, the current life. Vision, the rate, it's the same IMED network that you guys have now. It would just be through Blue Cross Blue Shield. The rate goes up just slightly, like 39 cents for an employee only, 10 cents for employee spouse, so it's not bad. But then when we look at the employer paid life insurance, that portion goes down a little bit for your end, and then they match the voluntary life rate. So all in all, if we do move just the vision and the life and vol life, we'll get another 1.5% off the medical renewal to get us down to 1.19, which is great.
Okay.
Thoughts on that, you guys? Or do you wanna think about moving that, or do we need to,
I guess I don't have to deal with the consequences of moving
the vision's gonna be the same network, so they're
So
gonna
it
just
wouldn't be
have a
painful
different
on
card, no network change. And the life is basically, that's gonna be seamless as well.
From a money perspective, I'd say we do it, but I don't, unless there's some reason that I'm missing.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with moving forward with it.
My other thing is this, the claims fee that we have right now from Blue Cross Blue Shield with BPC just doesn't seem to be running as smooth as we had hoped. Envision already has a setup with Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have another group that does the claims fee like you guys do, and it works out great. Their per head price is $6 rather than $6.25. There is a setup fee of $7.50, but I've asked Homestar to take care of that for you guys.
Okay.
It's just gonna be an easier feed. We have found a lot have slipped through the cracks when people call, they haven't gotten their checks. We get it all taken care of, but it's more frustrating for them when it should just be a smooth transition. They should get that check in the mail back from the HRA to pay their provider. It shouldn't be an issue. We do seem to have a lot that have slipped through. We've caught it. But just, it's the frustration for the employee. We don't want that, and then extra work that if we can have it run smoothly at a lower cost, why not?
Sure.
So would you guys be okay with moving that to Envision? Again, the employees won't see any difference because it's gonna be the same setup that they have now, just a different claim speed that runs smoother.
I mean,
And we'll still keep the Cobra then through BPC, which we
Right.
handle for you guys anyway.
sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think you need to probably make a motion though.
okay. I'll make a motion that we move the, what is it, Vision
Vision
and
in the life.
the Life to ECBS and the claims process to Envision.
Perfect, yeah. And then what I will do is I'll get the revised rates and I'll get those over to you guys so you can see what it'll be at the 1.19%.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Do we have a second to my motion to change? Mr. Bowers? Call them. Is there any other comments? Yes.
As far as the life insurance is concerned, is there gonna be medical screenings, any of that prior to?
Well, nope, so what's gonna be nice is you'll be able to pay up to the guarantee issue, even if you've already purchased, maybe you're not at your guarantee issue yet. They're gonna do a whole new open enrollment where current employees who maybe didn't take up to the guarantee issue or even didn't take it at all can enroll at open enrollment up to that guarantee issue.
Is that regardless of medical history or
Yeah.
anything like that?
And then I'll get in touch with you guys so we can set up open enrollment meetings.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect. Okay,
Thank
well, I'll
you.
get things rolling on my end.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
See you later.
Okay, and if there's no other comments or discussion, then we'll call the roll to approve that.
Alt,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay. Bernie McCarty and Area Wide is next month, we think, and now we're back to the audit, or no, not back to the audit, we're to the audit, sorry, I was jumping ahead to the budget. So Hope Wheeler's here with Myron's here. Oh, sorry, oh, Myron, did you have anything that?
I do have a few things.
Okay.
So we did a quote on the cyber, we saw that premium go up because there's a lot of activity in the cyber world right now. So the premiums are going up all the way across the board. So we quoted that because we're independent, we can quote it with another company. So right now, we're at a standstill because the county doesn't have multi-factor authentication, so which means that you would have to have a couple different steps of logging into different areas of security, whether it be email or other things. So my recommendation, I sent to Joe was to talk to your, as an area wide.
Yeah, and they'll be here next month, and I
Yeah.
did put out that request to Bernie to have that prepared and ready for discussion.
Yeah, and so that's my recommendation is to follow up with them, see if we can get that in place, and then we can go back and then try and quote it again. But right now, we're being declined for the quote on that. So you do have coverage in place. We extended the policy, we redo the policy of where we're at, but we just wanna try and manage that premium a little bit better with something different, to kind of get different options. So, and that's through ICRMT, they're handling that for us, that part of it. So we'll follow up on that next when we get information back on your area-wide threat. As far as the county policy goes for the property and casualty, I've got some numbers here for you guys for what we had for the original prices of the building and for when ICRMT came in and did an audit for exactly what the buildings would cost to replace. So obviously that drove the premium up, and that's why we had them here to discuss that with you guys. So there was one thing in question that I kind of brought up is the historical building, because that's gonna be your biggest bounce in premium there. that's gonna be a real big premium driver, because I believe it went from 2 million to 10 million on that for replacement costs. So there was a question of maybe, how do we insure that? Do we have to insure that? What's the qualifications for replacement coverage on that building? Do we need replacement coverage to make it, comply with the historical, monument part of it? So, I made some phone calls and got a hold of, some people out in Washington. I sent that, information to Jill, and there is, by their, rules, there is no specific, replacement insurance that you need to have on there. Now, like, if there's a partial loss and you wanna keep it on the register, what was being said about, let's say, windows, if you had stained glass windows of such, if that was a thing, then they would want that put back the way it was. But there's no actual requirements for the county that has to have that building, your decisions on how to insure that. So, I suppose that's something you need to discuss, because in my theory is if you lose, the building and all the history in it, I mean, so how would you get that put back? Like, what would be the purpose of having replacement costs? Can you duplicate that somehow? So that's not my call, but I just wanted to point that out, of what that looks like.
In
And that
order
is-
to keep it on the historical thing, we'd obviously have to replace the windows the way they were, but if you chose that you didn't care if it stayed on the historical thing, you could put any windows in there.
That's correct.
Okay, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Not saying that's.
And I don't know how the funding works with that, if you guys get any sort of additional funding through grants or anything like that, that has those specific qualifications. But as far as being on the register itself, there are no insurance requirements that say how you need to insure that. And that's coming from them, that's not coming from me, so I just wanted to point that out. That's something that I thought would be a way you could look at possible savings on that. So as far as the other ones go, it's everything's expensive right now, the materials, the labor, is very expensive. So to replace these buildings, like especially this building here is undervalued. And we haven't done a cost estimate in a while, so, this is getting us up to where to replace this building on a total loss, should something happen, then these are the numbers that they're looking at. So there's also a decision to be made as well, if you wanted to not put it at replacement cost, if you wanted to do it under a functional, if you didn't want to build it the same way, you wanted to do something different, maybe you don't need so many different building compartments of it. Maybe you want to size it different, you could do a functional replacement. And then you can pay it out that way as well. So there's a couple different options. So this is something that, I can answer any questions as far as that you may have on how you want to do it after you have your discussion. But, we probably need to get this done soon so that we can get the renewal in. And we can also renewal and make changes as we go. I mean, if we decide that this is something that we can't get done in time, we can get the renewal done, and then you can make changes, and then it would generate either a bill or a refund. That we can do that as well. So that's part of what I needed to talk to you about before we can get proceeding on the application for the renewal.
Well, to insure it to the value you're talking here, how much would the premium of just that alone be?
It's
Depends on
round
the
number,
lifestyle.
yeah, it depends on how you do it.
Okay.
But round numbers, if we just took where you were before and what we say where you should be, it was over 20,000 in premium. In
Just that
addition to,
alone?
yeah, just the changes alone,
In addition to what you paid before?
that's correct.
Okay.
So, and that's why I'm trying to manage that for you, to figure out how, do you really need, specifically, my specific point is a historical siting. But, and if you wanna keep it that way, that's your decision. I just wanted to let you know, this is what the costs will be going up, front, and how you could have some options to manage it. So, and this building here as well, I would assume this is something you probably should discuss on the functionality of this building. Is this, let's just say the whole thing got wiped out, would you build it back exactly the same way? So then you need to discuss, what you would do, and then that would serve that function. And then we would say, okay, we wanna insure it to this price.
That's probably true of all of our buildings.
Yeah.
Very likely we build back differently.
Yeah, courthouse, I mean, jail, those sort of things, the whole function is, if my house was destroyed, I'd probably put my house back the way it was. But if I lived in a Victorian and my kids are all gone at my age, I don't want a Victorian, I want something more functional.
You mentioned the word jail, but that's one thing we have to put back into the function that's now today.
So that would be replacement, right, exactly, that's a good point,
But you wouldn't necessarily build the building itself back to something.
Right.
Instead of a two-story building, it might be a one-story building. Content would be,
I don't think we need to redesign everything. The point is that to build a building of the same size and stuff, it's gonna cost about that much money, and I think we'd call that good enough. I mean, I don't think we need to have endless meetings about planning something that may never happen, but
if there's a difference in the insurance premium, though, that would be the concern.
I saw the nightmare of trying to figure out how to build an animal control building here, and that took 6 months and $10,000, it sounds like, of planning that's wasted money. I don't think we wanna do that on every building in the county.
However, if you decide, like I pointed out, the two big challenges, the two big premium drivers right here, the big differences are this building, the administration building, and the historical society. So if you focused, in my opinion, if you focused on these two buildings to try and manage the premium as much as you can, then you can have ongoing meetings of each building, going forward, and make decisions of, maybe meet with the department heads of these buildings and discuss with them what their thoughts are of how much space they use in those buildings and things like that, I mean, I know you've got like a lot of the 911 stuff over in the courthouse, I've been through all the buildings, and I know there's places that you think that there's not, function for it, but actually there is on some of that stuff, so that's a decision to be made by the board. And as soon as I get information back on that, I can have the applications completed, and then we'll have the premium, the quote for you guys for the next meeting for your budget.
Okay, when is the premium due?
That's December 1st.
We have to do something next meeting in order to meet.
What do you have in the budget right now, Jill? These new numbers, or what's?
For liability? I have,
I mean, last time when we were here, I assumed we were gonna have to pay this
How
whole
many years is it written for then?
one extra amount.
Yeah.
for liability, I bumped it to 200,000 after the last meeting we had.
Is that what, like 25,000 higher or whatever? Or that was like their full number? Or-
Close to it, yes.
Okay. I think probably somebody wants to lead meetings, I don't wanna be in them, but if they wanna decide how to redesign the admin building for the day the tornado comes through, they can have at it. But that historical building, I mean, the only, other than the historical significance of it, it's your storage, right, of these documents that would need, in theory, we'd need a place to store them, but I guess if they're destroyed, maybe we wouldn't, I don't know.
Well, if they're destroyed, we're in deep doo-doo until I get my microfilm taken care of, so, if they're destroyed, we're out of them anyway, I mean, it's gone, so it's just a prayer that the microfilm at the state is good, but, I mean,
I guess my.
they're irreplaceable records, but.
So I
So
guess
you
my
can't
point
put
is
an
what
amount
other
on it.
function is that building serving other than historical significance? it's storing these documents.
It does have our books in them, but that was something that, those books were sitting on the side of the road, waiting for a truck to come pick them up and take them to a dump or wherever, when I think it was when my office, the clerk's office, moved over here, so in the early 90s. So they aren't there because we preserved them, it's because the Historical Society saved them, and I thank God that they did, basically.
Will?
I'm all for functional.
Yeah, I mean, I think. I don't know what the right number is, but I don't think we need to insure it for $11 million. Would be my feeling.
I can get you quotes, if you guys throw me some numbers, I can get quotes for whatever you want to.
Previously, we had it,
What?
$2.7 million. Even that, I mean, it's a lot of,
It is a lot of money.
as far as I'm concerned, if it's a complete loss, you bury the foundation, move on with your life, but that's probably my harsh opinion. But
Well,
if we need a storage building to replace it, then okay, we need some money in there to
Well,
erect
it's
some
like-
kind of a storage facility.
Right, and it's like Brayden said, once they're gone, they're gone.
Well,
So it doesn't matter what kind of money value you put on them. You're basically replacing the building.
We're gonna replace it with a better building that serves some function.
Right, absolutely.
We determine how much we think that would be worth and probably use that number, I guess, I don't know.
You may have said it, Myron, but the functional replacement, is that the 8 that's listed here? The replacement, or the functional replacement value,
Where are you at on the?
for the Historical Society?
No, so, your previous was 2.6,
Mm-hmm,
and then your, that's your contents is the
Mhm.
8.
okay.
Or no, I'm sorry, that's the difference, and then the new price would be the 10.6. Your contents, I believe, was in there, wasn't it?
2.6 million.
So that's 10.6 to replace it as close to the way it is now?
Yes.
Okay, do we
Basically
know what a
built an
functional?
1800 style
We don't.
courthouse.
You
We
don't,
know
okay,
what
you
the
have to
price
get
would be
that to me.
on the functional,
Sure,
on that, we can guide you on that, you
Sure.
know, kind of give you some ideas and guidelines on what, you know, how to do that.
I mean, to me, and I know nothing about all this, so bear with me. I think the functional would be, it's being used as storage. I mean, because if you lose the historical significant, that's gone forever. So to put up a building that can store something, or I don't know what, would be the only thing. But if the documents are destroyed, then I don't know if that's.
There wouldn't be a need for storage.
Well, that's, maybe if the top part, somehow the basement was still okay in the document, I have no idea.
Sure, I get it.
But the tornado took the top of the thing off and it made it useless, but you still had the documents in the basement, then you might need a building to put them in rather than rebuild. I don't know.
There's another option for a building like that, if it's something that you wouldn't put back, then you would probably look at actual cash value, and then you can set the value for wherever you want. The only drawback of that would be partial losses, so then you're gonna take some co-penalty on partial losses. You know, you're taking a little risk there. Here, this building here is what
I guess that would be more of my worry. You get straight line winds and it blows the side of the roof in and.
Right.
Okay, then you do wanna replace the roof in that circumstance, so you don't wanna be.
But you would still have coverage, you're taking a higher risk at doing it that way. And now, opposed to this building, which you would obviously put back, but not the same way, that's more of a functional. But something that says it's a total loss, like a good example would be a rental house. If you have a rental house and, you know, maybe it was your mom and dad's house and you got renters in it, you don't wanna tear it down. And I always ask the question, you know, if something happens to that house, would you put it back? And usually the answer is no. So that's actual cash value, that's a no-brainer. You know, that's kind of the way we would suggest that, so.
Maybe you should get us a number for that.
Sure.
I don't know, something to look at.
Yeah.
Unless Charlie, that's up.
Maybe this out of line, I don't know, the question I have, the health department stores a lot of stuff upstairs here. They say they gotta have it all the way back to whenever they got it. Now, do they insure themselves, or do we have to insure for them? Or do we bill them or whatever?
I mean, they pay rent. Oh,
No, they
They
don't.
do not pay rent, sorry. So I guess that would fall, the
That falls under
contents
the
that are up
county.
there fall under our,
Under your
policy. Again, I don't know how you recreate those documents if they.
To me, it's almost like antique stuff too, because what's
Yeah,
gone is gone.
you can't make an old one after it's gone.
Yeah, right. So I don't know, though, they ought to be keeping a copy of it somewhere else if that's important enough to be kept
Well, I
forever,
think that's
right?
kind of that's what Brienne's talking about. They have, these documents are over in the courthouse. They, in theory, have them down in Springfield. And she's, as we've been talking about here, she's trying to get things microfilmed again so that we have copies of these things. So hopefully the world doesn't end if, God forbid, they,
Maybe the health
disappeared,
department's doing the same thing, I don't know.
I would assume they gotta have some kind of a digital record or microfiche or something. I don't know.
That might cover that. Just a question anyway.
They, I guess that's more of their, it's their documents, and we got the building and its contents, but to your point, if the building burns, they're gone, and hopefully they have some kind of a digital record, but I'd say that's more of, hopefully Dee and the health department have that under control, I don't know.
I hope they do, put it that way. I hope they're not.
The state, maybe it's similar, I don't know, the state has records of that stuff too, they scan them, I don't know, but I don't know that that's our problem, but it's probably something that needs to be thought
Somebody
about.
ought to understand it's their problem.
Yes. But maybe get the, whatever term you used, yes. Oh, okay. She's raising her hand.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can put some numbers together for actual cash value on that building, functional on this building.
That's,
Probably would need, some square footage, you know? Like you're using the square footage that's in this building now, and that's generates the, you know, when you put the cost replacement estimator together, it's the materials that you use, and it's the square footage, and then how many bathrooms and electrical, you know, those kind of things, what kind of roof is it? So we kind of get an idea, we'll need an idea of what kind of square footage that you're gonna use, and what type of building that you would consider. You know, are you gonna consider more of a FBI building, or more of a brick building? You know, those things all have, you know, different costs per square foot, and that's how they take all that into place, and that's what's called the cost replacement estimator. All that input is put in. You know, this building is block, and it's got a basement, it don't have a basement, you know, all those sort of things. That calculates a square foot price.
could you just tell us kind of what those basic parameters, I mean, obviously square footage and number of bathrooms and,
Yeah.
and what it's made out of, but what are the list of things that they need to be able to do that without, short of us having an architect design a whole new building?
You know, we would need to know the type of building. You know, there's
And if you
concrete.
wanna just send me the list,
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
get it
absolutely.
together, I can work
I
with
guess what I'm
Chris.
getting at is,
Yeah, I'll work
is
with Chris
looking
to
at
get it
maybe next
together.
time we can,
It's a very
Agree on
it's
what that
I
is.
would put it together, there's a list, and they're numbered.
Sure.
You know, it's fire resistant, it's block, it's frame, it's a pole barn, those are all numbers, so those numbers are all, you tell me what the number you want, and how many bathrooms is important, you know, how many plumbing fixtures, those sort of things. The HVAC system, is the stuff gonna be on the top of the building, you know, those sort of things, what type of roof, so those are the most important parts.
well, maybe if you can get us that, then
I can get that information.
some other group can decide about those things. So we can talk about it.
And listen, I'm here, if you guys have any questions,
Mhm.
please feel free to reach out to me, and we can try and help you along through this as
Yeah.
easy as we can.
Well, next, if we can get that list, then next month we'll
I'll get that right away for you.
start arguing over fixtures.
Any other questions regarding insurance policies?
Okay,
Thank you.
so we have the big number in the budget, basically, so it's
I do,
We've got it
I love
covered
the big number
in a
and
worst case scenario, so I don't think that's a major problem from a budget perspective. Okay, Bernie McCarty's not here. Now, yes, an audit. Fiscal year 21, which was a long time ago.
Yes. My name's Hope Wheeler. I've met some of you, principal in charge of the audit for Clifton Larson Allen. Yeah, as Mike mentioned here, a few months later than normally are, is bad news. The other bad news is I'm usually here being completely done and there's still some pieces left. But I do expect, the good news is I do expect everything to be issued next week. So I provided a draft of the financial statement audit late last night, so it has been through the review procedures for the overall financial statement audit. There were, just to talk a little bit about some of the reasons for it, there were multiple reasons for it taking longer than normal, but one of the reasons is there were a lot of changes this year. There's a new standard called GASB 84 fiduciary activities, which really require looking at every single fund you have, and you have a lot of funds, and determine under this new standard how it needs to be reported. So there were funds that moved from one fund type to another fund type or vice versa. And it also changed the way you thought, we had to think about in each case how any remaining funds in each of those funds are shown. So overall, it might not make a big difference to you, they're all still in here, but they're recorded in different places and shown a little bit differently. Also because they restatement, so it changed the beginning numbers, so it might not necessarily tie to last year's audit.
Okay.
So that's in here. We do have an emphasis of matter paragraph, we call it, in our audit report explaining this implementation of this new standard and the restatements that it caused, it resulted in. Just to touch on some highlights of this report. For your full accrual basis, net position, not gonna spend a lot of time on this since it is November 30, 2021 numbers. But I did wanna point out another couple of positives is you have unrestricted net position for your general governmental funds. That is a positive number, it's around $3 million. For a lot of counties I work with, that's a negative number. A lot of it because of that implementation years ago of accruing any pension liability or any other post-employment benefit liabilities. But you guys have that managed so it's not triggering a negative net position for you. Then the statements on the fund by fund basis, which I know is generally of more interest to everyone. There are changes there too, because with a lot of additional grant funding coming in, primarily the ARPA triggering that has made your grant fund a major fund. So now we're showing that in its own column in the financial statements. And then it made a few highway related funds move out of the major fund columns into the back statements. They're still shown separately, but not as major. So once around moving around the funds, which makes these statements look pretty different and changes our scope somewhat too. On the major funds this year, always the general fund, IMRF fund, the health department fund, and the grant fund. And then the rest are grouped together in non-major. All of those had positive final net position and positive revenues over expenses. Now the health department fund and the grant fund, very small as expected because they're pretty much break-even type funds with grant in and expenses. Another change I just wanted to point out is that GASB 84 made a statement of fiduciary net position look a lot different. What that means really is you have a lot of funds that are just holding money for others. Treasurer's fund, if there's property taxes still sitting there for whatever tax sales and things, that's holding money for other funds. Circuit clerk fund, county clerk fund, once again, it's not necessarily county money to be spending. Those are shown in here. Drainage districts, money sitting that you're helping the bookkeeping of drainage districts. Those are all shown in here, and starting this year, have to show all the ins and outs of those, which is significant numbers on a statement in your financial statements. So that's kind of a recap of these financial statements. The single audit, for the second year in a row now, because of additional grant funding and grant expenditures, you rose to the threshold of a federal funding audit or single audit. That's also part of the reason for the delays. A lot of that funding is health department funding, some of the ARPA, but that's more for future years. So that required additional testing. Like other counties, your grant process is very decentralized, there's not typically one person in charge of tracking all your grants and providing this information. So we kind of, Jill helps with this, health department helps with this, but we have to piece together information to make sure we have a complete schedule of expenditures and federal awards. That changed a lot. We get numbers and then, nope, that's not right, let's get a different number. So we really just wanna make sure that's a good final report of all expenditures. Then while we were doing that, our person doing this testing left, we were kind of set back with delays there too. But we have gotten through that testing now. Our major program being tested this year was contact tracing. We've gotten through that work, it's been through my review, it has one final level of review to go. So with that single audit report, attached to that is where we report our findings. So I don't have those here for you today. I will say, just as far as general financial statement audit, I am expecting similar findings to last year as far as the standard ones where you have us help with the financial statement preparation and the accrual and modified accrual adjustments. And then some correcting entries that were required. Though I've gone over all those with Jill in detail, and she's aware of those and in agreement with those. Another piece of good news is, for a long time, we've talked about a sheriff department finding, and that one is off the list now. So good news there. Thank you. Those offices, like circuit clerk, county clerk, sheriff's office that have their own accounting, they don't run through the county. Typically smaller staff, hard to segregate the duties and have review processes, but we've just said for that one for years, if you can find a second set of eyes to review things, that helps mitigate the risks. It's not big dollars flowing through there, as you know. We do still recommend there's some reviews that are happening that aren't documented, and in our mind, if we can't see it, it's like there is no control there, but just making sure those reviews are documented, signed off, and that a second set of eyes reviewed bank reconciliations, et cetera. On the single audit, like I said, once that gets reviewed next week, I'll send over a draft of that. Jill's looked at what we have for final numbers for the actual federal expenditures for each of the maybe 20-25 grants. And if we're expecting to have a finding related to procurement, just as far as, and this, we ran into this at several counties too, with emergency purchases happening and very quick purchases, there wasn't always the proper documentation of this is, there's only one sole provider for this purchase, or this is emergency, and with the federal standards, they require you to document that. But it wasn't a material weakness, still felt like they were qualified expenditures. Well, we will also issue a separate management letter, like we have off and on in the past, with just some other, not significant necessarily, but other recommendations of things to look at. I've gone through all those with Jill. One of the things that took us longer this year too, and will be in that letter, I know, would just be inventory for the highway department. That has grown in value, so as that's gotten larger, it's become more material to us. We were still able to pass on it this year, but worked with them to develop a mechanism to track what that inventory is, especially at November 30th, and properly value it. So you have what that balance is, and count procedures right at the end of the year, so you can get those, make sure they're recorded properly or determine they're not significant enough to show as inventory at the end of the year. That's a whirlwind, a lot of information, talking fast there. I know you haven't had much time to look at what a draft, but I have provided that draft if anyone else needs to spend some time looking at it. And like I said, hopefully next week, or even maybe later this week, I can get you a draft of the single audit and hope to get those all issued next week. We do have the annual financial report for the comptroller's office prepared. Just maybe yesterday gave that to Jill to do a glance over. So as soon as this is issued, that can be push the button and hit submit. And are you still working on entering into the GATA system, or that's all entered?
It's all done, and I verified it with, yeah, I can do that, and I verified it with the changes as well.
Okay, very good. Whirlwind, thank you for listening to all that. Any questions you have for me right now?
I assume this is a problem with all this COVID money and the ARPA and all that stuff. It's probably a problem everywhere.
It,
Or
it
similar
very-
type issues as
It
far
very
as.
much is. I will say I haven't had a county without a finding about that yet. But now you guys not spending your ARPA money, you don't have any ARPA findings. In last year, don't have
Right,
any
it was
ARPA
all spent
findings.
this year, yeah.
So, that'll be an issue for next year, but hopefully all good. But others that did start spending theirs before November 31 or 12/31, depending on their year end, yes, there's been a lot of adjusting entries and I mean, I just shake my head because of the 500 pages of guidelines to follow, money kind of thrown at you and saying, here, follow these, but hold it, change, follow these. I just,
It's a mess.
yeah, I can't imagine everything you guys are doing.
Well, a lot of that documentation, I read through that several times, it contradicts each other in some places, so it, you know, we did our best to interpret
What you could.
what we could and I think we'll be all right, but.
Yeah, it's been a challenging year for, I know you and for us too, and so. But then when I send the draft of any findings or recommendations, certainly before we issue in final form, if there's any questions on those, we can talk through those and.
You think our internal
Provide a response.
controls and all that, as far as having the checks and balances, I mean, we're okay, or I guess you can tell us what in your findings or whatever, but, or recommendations, but, or, I guess,
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely still some good internal controls. I think over the years, there've been a lot of added steps to signing off and documenting review processes. And with things that have come up over this past summer, we've had to go back and do some additional testing and looking at things too. Just recently, both Amanda and Jill have provided, we just did like a triple check of, okay, Amanda's doing this and entering things, and then Jill's reviewing it, and she's getting that from departments, who department heads are signing off. So we are seeing multiple levels of sign off on reviews, maybe instances where you still add initials, but I could see kind of chicken scratches of, yep, this is so-and-so did this. So yeah, there are a lot of good controls in place, sign offs on bank recs, treasurer's office wise. Still just, one of the findings is just making sure then, while we're helping with the accrual adjustments, still certain cash basis items, making sure they are reviewed. Transfers back and forth between funds, fund balances, reversing of prior year entries, and just making sure things like that are reviewed and cleaned up, so that's all very clean, and we're just posting the accrual adjustments.
Sorry.
Very important.
Did I understand you to say a few minutes ago that we finally found our sheriff?
I'm not gonna say that.
okay, well, thank you.
I do appreciate the attention to that, so. All right, thank you very much, and
We'll talk soon.
yes, we'll talk soon and get finalization.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. I guess department head reports is next, so go around the horn, sheriff.
Sorry about that, I was downloading the Hero 911 app. I just got cleared for that, so that's something that is in connection with the school guard, Milford schools and Milford West schools. Is it finance or is it? So what that Hero 911 app does is if there's an incident at the school, it will automatically, once the teacher presses that button on their phone from inside the school, if there's an active shooter or incident, then that does three things. It pushes it out to 911. It notifies all law enforcement officers through this Hero 911 app that's within a certain area. So even if the guys have got that app downloaded on their phone and they're passing through Milford and a situation happens, they're right there and can respond right away, so. The body scanner, no real updates on that. When I did talk to him, he said there is a new machine in the works. It's a smaller, print scanner. So the delay may be, due to, they're gonna set us up with the newest technology, the better one, or the newer technology. Cissna Buckley patrol contracts, tentative start date would be 11/8. I would think that, the two village boards would look at that at their meetings, that could be technical program board meeting, unless it's gotta go through, finance prior to that. The medical assisted recovery grant, last year we got 18,000, this coming year we'll get 50,000. And that'll be in two payments of 25,000 each. We should get our first check soon for that. That can be used for many different things. It could be used for medication in the jail, purchasing equipment, stuff like that for that medical assisted recovery program. The new jail and report writing CAD system build, we started that on September 17th, I believe. We're having one representative from the jail, patrol, myself, and then Sandy and records, and then Eric's got people going from the CAD side to basically build that system, tailor it to how we want it built. What I liken it to is we're building a house that we're gonna be in for at least 20 years. We get to pick the drawer pulls, the trim, the color of the carpet and the closets. So we wanna make it the best system we can make it. So the Central Square team has really been great to work with. We have had a couple of incidents in the last month in Iroquois County. High profile incidents in which we put a lot of work into. That has brought up some issues again with the radios. I know I've talked about that. I continue to talk with Motorola on the coverage maps. I've got one guy that's really looking into the grant funding. But when we had these incidents and we had other officers coming from different locations, Kankakee, Vermilion County, Livingston County, they are all on the STARCOM. They can talk and hear what's going on, but our officers on the ground were pretty much, we had our ears closed because we couldn't communicate with anybody else on the ground. To date, there's been 83 instances that ICOM was unable to contact officers on their cell phone, on the radios. Even officers on one side of the house and on the other side of the house the other night, last Saturday night, we're having a difficult time getting in contact with each other. So I'm doing the best job I can do as far as to make sure this is the right system. We're down to finding out what the cost is going to be for this. Is there any discussion or do you guys have any thoughts?
I think last month you were saying that there were still some dead spots and stuff. Did they get that figured out or
Yeah.
with what you're looking at?
So what they found was, and they went to Sheldon, there's a tower north of Watsika, there's the water tower in Wellington, and then there's another tower site south of the county that there's a possibility of putting equipment on those towers. That is a costly thing, but it shores up that area as far as the coverage map. So the state police is running on the STARCOM system as it is, but like I said, there's times an officer could be at dispatch, state police, he have his radio and it doesn't work. Can be in the lobby of the courthouse and it beeps, it doesn't work. They can be at Casey's and it doesn't work. So I just find it hard to believe that the state police is okay with that. But I'm trying to make sure our officers will have communications all the time, just as an officer safety issue.
I guess from their perspective, do you think, apparently they haven't cared till now, but would they help pay for some of that since it's affecting them no different than us? Or would potentially if we changed?
Yeah, I'm working on that, trying to get a hold of somebody with the state police that handles their radio system is difficult, so I've reached reached out to Bearman and Bennett. So, to see what they can help us out with. So, I'm just really concerned that, you know, we've got 2 officers on, guys on a traffic stop down by Wellington, and he can't get out. So, on the radio. That's not all I have. Yes,
And this, when do you have to have your cameras?
first 2025.
What?
2025.
Oh, I thought it was January 1st.
For some locations, it is some places that have a certain population.
Oh,
For our
okay.
population, it's 2025. And we've researched that, we've looked at about 5 different body camera companies. I met with CPD, and we've done a collaborative effort because I wanna make sure we're gonna go with a good solution and the same solution. So the state's attorney doesn't have to worry about 4 or 5 different platforms on how to get these videos downloaded. So we pretty much narrowed it down to 2. We went up to Kankakee County and checked their system out. So there's a good chance we'll probably go with them. I'm working with one of the companies to do like a pilot program in the jail. So they'll send us 2 body cams and we'll do like a 2-month pilot program in the jail, see how that works out. Everything I've been here in 2023 is the year for the grant funding for body cams, so.
How about the license plate readers?
We have, sorry about that, I think I put that on the judicial. We have 4 out of our 8 cameras up and running. So, we have been getting hits, a lot of them are stolen license plates. Really doesn't mean a whole lot, because if you have a license plate stolen off your vehicle and you call and report it stolen, it's still gonna report that number as stolen. So if you drive your vehicle through past that license plate reader, it's gonna show stolen vehicle or stolen license plate. So we haven't had any problems, we haven't had any felony stops to where, you know, some lady is pulled out of her car because her license plate shows stolen. We have made contact with those drivers, and they're appreciative that we were stopping them to ensure that it wasn't the stolen plate.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Bree, you good?
Besides election equipment, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit, I put out an RFP for the microfilm conversion. I don't know if I mentioned this last month, but it is, a lesser amount of books than what I had originally thought, so that is kind of a promising thing. But that's due, and I'm having them open next month at the finance meeting, just to give you guys a heads up.
Sure. It's fine, okay. Eric?
ETSB approved their budget last night. I figured when we get into budget, we'll talk more about that, unless you want me to talk about it here.
Just wait.
There's quite a bit in with it that kind of fits in well with the joint dispatch budget, so.
Okay.
Other than that, I am currently hiring for 1 employee. Okay.
A different one, or
A different one.
Lisa, do you have anything?
I don't, I gave my report yesterday at judicial, I think I turned over like 45,000 to the county this month, but.
Very good. Frank? Sure. You got something you wanna share with us, or?
If I could.
Yep.
So we met in September with the Joint Ed Committee and updated quarterly reports. Everything's on track financially for spending and bills and everything, so we're good there. We did present a proposed budget at that meeting, so again, I don't know if you wanna talk about that now or later when we get to the budget, but
If you want to, just go ahead.
so I have some information there. Just a couple of things so as I took over, I wanted to kind of just bring everything back up to the surface and you know, start fresh. So what we did after the last several years of budget cuts and changes in both counties and in the state, our county budgets, we've had to manage, just like everybody else, with figuring out how to keep programs running. And so what we've done is we've adjusted the budget, and subsidized some of the budget and positions with other funds, from other accounts, grants and things like that. And so what I did with this proposed budget is I said, let's go back and let's set the budget exactly where we're currently staffed at. So if you look at the FY '22 budget, and then you look over to the FY '23 proposed budget, it looks like a significant increase. And what I want you to understand is that we didn't go crazy and give everybody a bunch of raises and hire a bunch of new positions. That's not what this is representing. What it's representing is what we really truly are staffed at. The difference in the amount is money that we've had to obtain from other sources in the last several years. But what I want everybody to understand is that those sources are starting to dry up as well. The need is still urgent with our services, what we provide. The amount of money that we do get from the county budgets is a very small part of our total budget. We subsidize, again, with many grants from the state to provide the services. One of the big things that we provide is truancy services. So for Iroquois County, we provide a full-time truancy caseworker that supports all the schools in the county. And so that's a full-time position, along with all the support staff that supports that position. And then all the other services that are required by statute to provide to the schools and the county. Professional development for teachers, licensure support. We add all of those things. So that's what that money from the budget goes to. So when you look down at the bottom where it shows the Iroquois County 24%, again, it looks like a significant increase. It's not, what I guess what I just want to make sure you understand is that we're not going crazy and just spending a bunch of money. That is currently what we are spending, and have been spending. So we didn't increase what we spent. We're just increasing the ask from the county to support what we currently are doing. The other thing I have here is a comparison of the last several year budget from what Iroquois County has allotted for the regional office, and some budget notes as well. So at the top, those are the allotments that we've received for the last 5 years. And then below there, just some notes. Keeping in mind, obviously with the pandemic, just like everybody else, there's been a lot of impacts. One of the needs that we're seeing a big increase in is supporting students with not only learning loss needs, but social emotional needs. And truancy has been a big challenge. Students are struggling returning to school, those of them that were not, that were remote because of the pandemic. Some of those challenges are really increased, and like I said, currently we have a full-time caseworker for Iroquois County. That person is spread very thin. It would be really helpful if we could enhance that service. And by getting a little bit extra funding. Again, we're tapping into other sources of funds to try to do that as well, but if we could, that would help us to do more in those areas as well, so. That was,
I had two questions. Did Kankakee County already agree to these numbers?
so they haven't had their budget hearing yet, but I did meet with the county chair and the finance director, and they are gonna propose it. And their approach is going to be, just the conversation we had is, they're looking at using some of their ARPA funds because of the truancy need increase based on the pandemic. And over the next couple of years, they're going to gradually take mixed truancy or mixed ARPA and general revenue, and gradually increase it into just being the general fund, to wean off of the ARPA because the ARPA is temporary.
Sure.
So,
The other question, I mean, I know we've always seen these numbers or that we pay this much out. Is there a reason, or is it done like this throughout the state? I guess, to me, the natural thing would be, why don't each of the school districts, who quite frankly have way bigger budgets than what we do, why don't they pay for it out of their budget? I mean, to me, that would make more sense. I don't really understand why it's coming out of the county.
yeah, and so the budget that we're looking at here, because we are a multi-county regional office,
Sure.
that intergovernmental agreement between the two counties, there's a requirement that the counties share in the cost of the regional office expenses. So that's part of this. And then there's also a requirement that the county regional office provides truancy services. So that's also part of this. So that's a very small amount. It's not enough to fix truancy. So the schools do also contribute to truancy. They have requirements that they have to provide truancy services to their students before they access our services. And then what we've done is we also have a truancy grant that allows us to enhance our truancy services beyond just the minimum of what we're required to provide. So with all of that, we're able to partner with both the school districts and the county to work through providing more truancy services than would be just the very minimum. So I guess to answer your question, there's a requirement that the county puts in for truancy, and then the schools also have their own expectations. So while it's not just on the school, I get what you're saying. It is part of both.
Is that because that's how this intergovernmental agreement is, or by some state statute where the county itself is required?
It's part of the state statute that the county is required to have a regional office of education, and part of that is to provide truancy services. But I want you to understand that the budget is not just for truancy.
Sure.
I'm emphasizing truancy because that's a big service that we do provide, and it is an enhanced need right now, currently. So.
Do the schools actually have a truancy officer?
They do not, and they're not required to, but they can. So the way that the statute is written is that the county, the regional office, is required to provide a truancy officer for the county, and that truancy officer is required to be paid by the county. The statute goes on to say that if a school district chooses to have a truancy officer, they may, but they have to pay that truancy officer. But it doesn't say that they shall.
Really don't understand why we're involved with this, but.
Well, and
I asked him the same question.
It makes no sense, but
if
not
you-
much in the state of Illinois does
and
make
if you
sense.
want, the answer would be, is that it is beneficial for the county to help at the level that we're at with truancy, to minimize that and to handle it then, instead of when that person gets older and gets into the legal system. So
No,
if we can
I'm
handle
not
it
saying we
now,
don't need the service, I guess if it were up to Mike McTaggart, I would say, fine, have a regional office. And the school's all gotta chip in money to fund it, and that's how it's paid for, that they, because quite frankly, I don't know how it actually works in practice, but what you just read off, which again is the state statute, it's not you could do or the school districts can do probably to change that. But I have a good feeling that if it's they may have a truancy officer and they may choose to take on these costs, I'm guessing they have decided that they won't do it, and therefore, that's probably why your people are spread thin, is because they're not doing anything. would be
and they
my guess.
do, the schools do, like I said, they do have a requirement that they have to do interventions before they refer them to us, refer students to us.
Yeah.
So again, we do work with them, and
Sure.
and it is a partnership, so it's not that they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
You know, they want their kids in school, and they do try to get them there, so.
Any other questions for, I guess, we still just have the 75 in our budget?
$81,030 was the amount for FY '23.
I guess we can talk about that in the budget, but we need to, thank you
Okay,
for
thank you.
explaining all that.
Yeah, if there's any questions or anything.
Okay, I think the election equipment. is
Okay.
next on the list.
Right on. Okay, so I have been poring over these bids because they were submitted very differently. One was submitted basically a la carte, and one was submitted with everything kind of lumped together. So making sure that we're getting everything that we need to have is one of the main things about these. So I gave you guys each these documents, which Jill has them brought up. We have the GBS bid, which is the Governmental Business Systems, and then the Liberty Systems LLC bid. So when you're looking at them, when I originally put the RFP out, I asked for 48 of the OS devices, which are the devices that actually scan the ballots. But I dropped that down to 44 because that's a little more reasonable, I guess, with new equipment, just to have 2 or 3 spares. So the numbers that are in bold are the ones that are the total amounts, is what we're looking at. So for the total one-time purchase fee for the voting equipment from Liberty, it's going to be $435,350. The total from GBS is going to be $517,858.08, which that was kind of a funny number to me, but whatever. One thing about the GBS system, it is a newer system. It was certified in the state of Illinois in 2021. It's a system that they began developing prior to 2015, but that is when it was first started to be used in other states. The Liberty Systems equipment, that was developed prior to 2011 and first started to be used in the state of Illinois in 2015. So it is a little older than the Heart Verity system from GBS. So that's where we're at for the total one-time fee. Now that is what I'm asking out of ARPA as far as the total one-time fee. Then we go down to the annual licensing fee. Now that is something that we have never had to pay before because our prior system, which was a Dominion system, when it was first developed, licensing fees weren't really a thing, I guess. So that's why they never really charged it. So the annual licensing fee for Liberty is the $12,600, and the annual licensing fee from GBS is $16,535. So it is a little bit more expensive. As far as when you go down to quarterly payments, which this is for, supplies, setup, and services. And these are what were priced differently, through GBS and Liberty. So Liberty quoted it as a quarterly payment where GBS priced it as a per election service. So I did the math on these, hopefully they are correct, I have done them several different times. So the Liberty total yearly would be $72,928, and the GBS amount would be $65,415. The Liberty quarterly payment includes annual equipment maintenance, where the GBS price does not. So there is a, maintenance line on there, which right now what we do is every other year for maintenance. So that's what I would continue to do if we went with the GBS bid. So that's the $12,600, and that's for every other year of maintenance during the contract. So then you'll see what our current election contract is, and it's kind of a shock when we're paying $44,130 currently to what it would go up to yearly, which would be there's two amounts on there. For Liberty, it's the $72,928. That's for the first year because they don't charge for the licensing fee the first year. So the last 5 years has that licensing fee added into it. For the GBS, $81,950 is what our first year of the contract would be, and then $88,250 for the 2 years of maintenance because the first year is included. So the difference for the 6-year contract on average, Liberty Systems came in at $622 less than what GBS did. So that's going to be ultimately what affects the general fund for the next 6 years. Now, with the bids, I also had them include services that we don't utilize right now. And the reason why I had them quote those is because I have no idea what I'm doing with new equipment. So setting the devices for election, making sure that that's done correctly, testing the devices, making sure that's done correctly. I think those are and then the applications to vote. Those are all services that could potentially be knocked out. And both of the companies have said verbally that they would adjust the contract accordingly. So there would be something in there that would allow me to knock off some of those services if I choose to take those services on again. When we first started taking them on, we had a full-time IT person in the office and their job was election equipment. So over the years that position, after the last person that held it passed away, it wasn't filled, and then we took it over because it was something that we were in dire straits with money at the time, and it was something that we kind of just were forced into doing. So as far as the two bids go, I am asking for approval of the Heart Verity system from GBS. While I realize it is a little more expensive for the initial cost, or a lot more expensive for the initial cost, and then there is a little bit more yearly, the $622. Their data is encrypted, digitally signed for tamper evidence. So it alerts the election staff of any, if anyone tries to tamper with the data. It also provides protection from unauthorized access to the internal systems and the electrical power and network connectivity. The firmware security also will protect against the loading or uploading of firmware while the device is set for election or in election mode. So there are a lot of tamper triggers that if the device goes out of the office with the supervisor, if someone tries to mess with the equipment, it will notify us, which the Unison system does not do that. Another thing about the HERT system, the ADA device, which those are required by law. They are not something with our current election system that we have ever voted on in Iroquois County. We had to purchase the TSX, have to test them, have to do everything that we do with the AccuVotes, but we have never had anyone vote on them in Iroquois County. That's something with the new system, they're much easier to work with, and they actually would be something that more voters may be interested in voting on because they can use the touch screen. It'll print a full-size ballot, and it'll look just like a ballot that you handwrite. It'll look exactly like that, and it's the same size as a regular ballot, where the Unison system that Liberty is proposing prints off a tape that's maybe 3 inches wide, and however long the ballot is as far as what they vote on, it prints out the name of who they vote for, and then it has a code at the bottom that's what's put into the scanner to count that vote. Where on the touch screen from GBS, it prints that full-size ballot, and that ballot looks exactly like every other ballot. It's just, the oval is just darkened by the printer rather than handwritten. So, what do you call it? I have it written down. The count logic is the same for the GBS devices as opposed to the Liberty. So that is why I'm asking for approval of the GBS.
Okay, so I guess from our perspective, like you pointed out at the beginning, the initial cost is more, but that's coming from ARPA.
Right.
So it
Hopefully.
doesn't necessarily 100% impact us. It sounds like it is a better, more modern system, and the annual cost difference is negligible. And you got, I guess.
I think from some of the things that Brandon has discussed with me too, that, we're wanting this equipment to last a long time.
Exactly.
And I think
It sounds like a better way to go.
That's a little better quality associated with it as well.
So I guess that being said, we gotta make a decision, and I think we go with what she recommends, and it sounds like a better long-term solution that'll last us another 40 years.
Well, I hope so. At least 20, yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the governmental business systems election equipment bid. And we have a second. Hughes, any other discussion or questions? Not, call the roll, please.
Alt,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McTaggart.
Yes. Okay.
Thanks,
Motion
guys.
carries. That is done. Next issue was, we had on there an executive session to talk about Amanda and Jill's salaries for the budget for the upcoming year, because that had not been resolved. I have a feeling that's why Lisa has graced us with her presence, so I guess before we do any of that stuff, if you guys got any input or feedback, I guess we probably need to do that now, or I don't, if you're just here to observe, I guess, however, if you've got anything you wanna say, I would welcome it, I guess.
I wasn't at the last meeting.
Sure.
With the raises, was it 5.5%?
Oh, sorry.
And 6% for chief deputies. I just think it needs to be fair with everyone.
So I think what all the, I always get my terms wrong as far as who's who and those things, but yeah, we're 6% on chief
On your
deputy.
cheat sheet. So originally the contract for AFSCME under 13 is set at 4%. AFSCME over 13 is set at 2.75. Highway AFSCME contracts are set at 2.5. And then chief deputies and administrative assistants don't necessarily have, they don't have a contract. So what was proposed was 5.5 for AFSCME, contract employees, and 6% for chief deputies and administrative assistants. And really, it's in the budget still like that. There has been no committee decision on whether or not they want to approve that.
It's in the budget.
Yes,
we
I have
discussed
never changed it, it's still in the budget.
As the 2.75.
And the reason, no, it's in there at the 5.5 and the 6,
Okay,
yes.
Yes.
And the reason that kind of, I suggested the 5.5 and the 6 was because of the different amounts that were previously requested by department heads that kind of fell somewhat between the requests. And then I figured it would be up to the committee to make a final decision regardless on what they would wanna do with those, cause honestly, we don't have to do anything, they're still under contract for another year. So being gracious, setting those kind of
But I
a
think
little bit
for
higher.
Lisa's benefit, we had this big, long discussion last month. That was, I think we all, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of agreed that we were, that
And we
was the
did go a
direction we were
0.5% higher for chief deputies just because they obviously have more responsibilities if one of you's gone. I mean, 0.5% is not a lot, but it's a little bit.
going. Basically 5.5 on everybody and then 6.
And that is still in the budget worksheets that
Okay.
everybody has.
So that was kind of where we sat, but the one outlier was Amanda and Jill had requested what would be more than those, and we, I guess, didn't have that discussion yet, and that was what we were supposed to get nailed down today, because we gotta get this finished, so. They were requesting more than the 6%, I guess would be, I don't know what the exact percent was, but that's what they were requesting. But we haven't actually had a committee discussion on that, so. That's kind of where it sits up to this moment. Yes,
I hate to derail you, but can I present my stuff before you go into your executive session so I don't have to return?
okay, that's fine, yes. Okay, let's talk about joint dispatch and ETSB. So you guys met last night?
Met last night, approved. So for those of you, you're gonna wanna look at the ETSB budget, which is 720 911 Emergency Service Board. There was quite a bit of discussion last night. We had Representative we had a member of Senator Berrickman's team, Jordan Baker, join us. We had Tom Bennett join us. We had Mayor Rick Feasfield, Chairman Schur, Mayor John Allhands, and we had the Executive Director, what was his name?
McCurry.
Ryan McCreary. So we had quite a few individuals there because one of the main things that we need to discuss, and this is specifically to the joint dispatch, is not necessarily how are we gonna fund it today, but how are we gonna fund it into the future? We know that they're going to request a larger amount for their salaries. I don't know who doesn't want a raise, as just previously discussed. So in order to get that to really get any movement at all, at least downstate, is we need to get those other 911 centers in and around our areas and actually get the movement to get it taken care of, increasing the surcharge specifically for the wireless contribution. If we get the wireless contribution to go more, then the ETSB can take over more of the salaries of the 911 telecommunicators. But that's gonna be a lot of work in the making, and it's definitely not gonna be, because right now, we're the only ones making the complaint. We're the only one that's trying to be the squeaky wheel, so we need to get a lot of support with this. And that's how it's gonna change downstate. The ETS Act is up for discussion in the spring session again, because it's due to sunset at the end of the year in '23. And that was really in the whole of what Representative Bennett was saying, is you need to get that support. And if you can get that support and get more of a following with it, then you can get further in trying to increase that surcharge. So there was a lot of opportunities also discussed as to how are we going to fund it in the future, at least as far as service charges. So I will cover that here in a few minutes. Long story and the short of it, the ETSB has decided that they were going to contribute $228,284.42. That is going to the joint dispatch budget. As current proposal, that's what they have approved. You can see that they're gonna run a negative budget of $22,710.40. Now, that could have the potential of still being a black budget. And that is because right now we are discussing an assistant department head and all the benefits that go with it. Now, that is really dependent on what happens with the FOP contract for the telecommunicators. We're really trying to push hard to get part-time employees, which will help alleviate a lot of our overtime balances. If we're unsuccessful there, then we're gonna talk about the assistant. And the assistant is gonna be, and we've gotta figure out exactly what we want that job description, but help in assisting some of that overtime. So we'll see where we get. That's gonna really be dependent on what happens with contract negotiations. Okay. So to move over to the joint dispatch budget. So again, I was talking about the wireless surcharge, what we're gonna do there. So this is the ETSB's proposal. Iroquois County and the city of Watseka will contribute $120,000 each to the budget, keeping it the exact same as you were for this fiscal year. The ETSB's amount, and then the other part of this proposal was to maintain the fire, volunteer ambulance, and police departments at the same number as they are paying for FY22. You can see their respective numbers there on the sheet.
Yep.
Another part of the conversation that we had in last night's meeting was, we know that these numbers are gonna have to grow. And one of the biggest complaints, or at least talking points, and I'm speaking to the village of Gilman, or city of Gilman, we're okay with pay, but everybody needs to contribute. So there's multiple ways that we can do it. We can do it by city, so all of the cities. So it's not just, okay, Gilman has its police force, or in this case, contract with Iroquois County, but what about the Danvers, the Crescent Cities, the Wellingtons that get the spot check from the Iroquois County Sheriff? So they're wanting to see what we can do in that front. Now, we've got multiple ways that were presented earlier this year to this committee, and it was decided to stick with the arbitrary number that we already have in place. But after your organizational setting or session in December, we're gonna wanna start trying to get some numbers to these towns and pick what direction we're gonna go for the billing of these these dispatch charges. Whether we're using an estimated assessed value, whether we're using cost per call for service, whatever the case may be, we're going to invite everybody in, mayors, fire protection districts, to find out where is it gonna go, what do you feel is gonna be the most fair, and try and get that consensus. Where that's gonna land, we're gonna try and aim for either December, or probably most likely it's gonna be a January meeting, because all of them are going to start their budget conversations in February, March. Hopefully by that point, we will have some satisfactory numbers with the FOP union, so we'll know really and truly, we'll have the FY24 budget already pretty well in place, so we can tell them, this is what it is, play accordingly, and we will have their buy-in by a majority as to what method we're going to use. Yeah, questions?
Nope, I think it makes sense to me. What about,
Oh, yes. There is another option that was also discussed, and that's the obvious, increase the taxes. Now, right now, the county has decided that it's going to use the current method is what the state allows, but you can also do truth in taxation and increase that number yet. That was one other method that was brought up during our conversation and seemed to be at least semi-amenable to some.
Meaning
That's on the property tax.
charge a property tax fee for PTSD.
Charge an additional.
Well, our levy for on the property taxes at the maximum the statute allows, we can exceed that by doing truth in taxation. And Mayor Teachfield says that fulfillment is done. I think it's a process that's worked well for them. I can see where it might work a lot better for a town than it would be for the county, because like in a town, they could say, well, we're gonna put curbs in on your street, but you gotta kick in some more money to pay for it. And people can see the result more tangibly.
Well, the reality is that all the farmland carries the burden, and there's probably not all that many 911 calls in the middle of a cornfield, except for last month.
Yesterday we had.
Compared to the villages.
Yesterday we had at least one brush fire.
Okay, well, I stand corrected.
The concern, I guess, from both mayors last night, and I understand where they're coming from, and probably in a sense makes sense, is that value of joint dispatch is not measured by how many calls you make or how often you use the service, it's measured by the availability. The service is there for people to use, if that's what you're paying for.
Right.
And so with that thought in mind, they're saying that they're thinking is that there should be a way that all residents throughout the county would pay for that service equally. And I suppose that argument may have merit. At the same time, you can look at the telephone surcharge and say that's really a user fee. That's the only people that use joint dispatch. Nobody, if your house is on fire up in Clifton, and you're not gonna get in your car and drive over here to joint dispatch to send the fire department out.
Right.
So it's the use of the phone that does this, and so that's where the telephone surcharge makes sense and comes into play.
For sure.
I guess.
And there's no other, they know Verafin and Bennett, we're the only people in the entire state of Illinois that have this problem.
Well, that's.
UCCI.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
There was a request about 2 years ago for UCCI to survey the 80 counties that they are affiliated with, such as us. And they admitted that what they asked the counties to do was poorly written, and was probably the main reason why a lot of counties didn't even respond.
Sure.
I think also that there are counties that maybe don't completely understand how they pay for those services. I think, for example, in Ford County, they use their correctional officers, and everything is lumped on one line.
Right.
In their budget, so nothing being broken out, they don't know where the money is coming from or going. I've talked to the county board members over there, and they've admitted to me that they don't understand what they're doing. So I think that situation plays out in other counties as well. But the population of every county is gonna be different. Counties like Ford County, they use correctional officers. Are usually, in a sense, you could say, our telecommunicators have times when they may not be very busy. If we had something else for them to do, making them more productive, that might help offset some of our costs and concerns. But how we can do that in this county, I don't know. I'm not suggesting we go there. But I can see where in other counties they may be having an arrangement like that that helps them manage the cost of providing dispatch. Every county is different, and I think that's part of the problem.
I agree with the chairman. teachers' comments on that. Everybody's got a different budget, how their weights and measures work, so how we're doing it is obviously different than at least one county, and I'm sure there's 102 counties in this state, there's probably 102 different ways to do their budget.
One thing that also happened last night, more so after the meeting, when the representative left, I left, and we were talking in the hallway. And he reiterated again the need for us to be very proactive in getting something like this done. He's even to the extent of me and maybe one or two of us coming to Springfield to meet with, like this gentleman from UCCI. There's a couple of other county-wide state organizations that he suggested we could meet with also. That might provide a mechanism whereby we can put whatever pressure or lobbying on the legislature to get some things done. One of the questions that was asked last night by Jordan, the Americans representative, was how much do we think the surcharge should be increased to? One person said $4. And then someone else, and I think I supported the idea that really $3 we probably would be able to operate pretty comfortably. But, I guess it's something that when it's considered, there'll be a lot of different ideas. The biggest problem that I have with the whole arrangement, the way it exists right now, is that Cook County charges $5 and we charge $1.50. And every county in the state outside of Cook County is at $1.50. That's grossly unfair. And that's obviously something that needs to be corrected.
Okay, well, definitely needs to be addressed, like we
talked about.
discussed.
Basically, we're saying we have something that we can
For now.
put together for this year, which is our immediate need. Going forward, we gotta get something actively in place for the future.
Absolutely, yep. Okay,
So as far as the numbers again, Jill had already said in the ETSD meeting and when we were going through hearings, she had already budgeted for $120,000 to come out of the general fund. At present, right now with the safety tax, because the $150,000 is also in there, that is also presently budgeted. And then, as I stated before, right now, the ETSB, this is their current approved budget. So if there's any changes or anything, please let me know.
okay, very good. All right, so I don't think that changes any of our numbers, what we talked about last month, so.
No.
It doesn't impact that. I guess before we get down that thing, we need to have this conversation about the salaries, so, I guess we can go into executive session and I guess I'll make a motion to go into executive session under 5 ILCS 120/2-C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body. Have a second? Mr. Alt? All in favor? All right. I can't use the restroom.
Is there any